Hello everyone, my name is Laura. You're watching the Beanbird 2 channel where we talk about testimonies and the goodness of God. And today I want to talk about homeschool. And if you do homeschool already, that's great. And then we can support one another. Or maybe you're curious about homeschool and you want to learn more and you saw this on YouTube and you thought you'd click on it and see what this is about. And I'm going to go over a lot of the things I wish that I knew before homeschooling. And I am also going to have personal testimony here about our experience and ways that God supported us through this journey. So beginning with the first question, which is why homeschool? David and I were both public school graduates. Homeschooling was something that we had not even considered as an option when our kids were in school age. We just thought we went to public school, so of course our kids will go to public school too. And there are things that I've learned about homeschool since that are great things to consider. One of them is, as a parent, you have more FaceTime interaction with your children, which is more time for you to speak life and Christian values and getting to build that relationship with one another, building and establishing trust and knowing what's going on in their lives. And I think that that is very important in growing those relationships with those young ones. The next thing is you do get to control what material is taught. If your kid is gifted, you can lean more in that direction. If your kid needs a little bit more support, you're able to personalize that curriculum. Also, you're able to incorporate Bible, prayer time, Bible studies into your school so that you have time for it. Also, you're able to give a peaceful environment where your kid can relax a little bit and learn. I know that for people, and I can speak for myself, when I'm in a stressful environment, it's hard to learn. And when you're in the comfort of your home and a familiar surrounding, it really does allow your kid to kind of focus in on the material and relax. Also, they have the freedom to explore personal interests. If your kid is more geared into engineering or education or sciences, you're able to spend a little bit more time in those areas. And when you're able to personalize it, it does increase your kid's interest and they'll want to learn more. You really do foster this desire in your child to learn more information because it's exciting versus preparing for a test so you can pass a grade and so you can prepare for the next test so you can pass a grade. I know that for myself, I just got into cram mode with school. I was constantly cramming for tests and then I had very little retention. But I noticed with my own kids, I see them reading their school books over summer break and on the weekends just because they're interested in the material. And when you foster that love of learning, the retention is so much higher. Also, the ability to have a flexible schedule. I know for some parents, if you have extracurricular activities or your work schedule, or even if it's just your kids' waking time, you're able to be a little flexible. I know for us, we start school at 8 a.m., which gives our kids plenty of time to wake up and eat breakfast and be at their desk at 8 in the morning. Now, for other families, they prefer to start later at 9 a.m., or maybe you have an early bird. I have one son who's always starting his school at 7 a.m. because he wants to start first thing. So you're able to kind of personalize and be flexible in that schedule. And also, I think that homeschooling grows a sense of parent empowerment. You learn that you can do this. Even though the society and the world might say, you don't have what it takes, this is complicated, you can't figure it out. Once you learn the freedom in homeschooling, I feel like so many testimonies I've heard from parents that say, wow, like I had no idea that I could do this. I wish I would have done it sooner had I known that how easy this would be to work out, and that you start to feel confident and more empowered in what your student is learning and doing and your role in your relationship with your kids. So those are some really great things. The next thing I want to head off is everybody loves to talk about, well, what about socialization? If my kid is not in public school or a charter school or a private school, they're not going to be socialized and they might be awkward. And there's many studies, I'm not going to go over them, I'm sure you can find them, that actually prove the opposite to be true. Homeschool students are very well spoken in a general sense. And I find that there are so many socialization opportunities to parents that homeschool. I know that there are some places like skating rinks and ice skating rinks that have special hours for homeschool students during lunch hour. There's also co-ops that have like field days where you can meet at the sports field and do that. And other co-ops, I've heard there's a lot. You can look at them in your area, but there are a lot of options and they're optional. If you want to do them, you can. If you don't want to do them, that's fine too. I find that my kids are really involved with church. They volunteer at the church. They have friends at the church. We do Sunday school. We do Wednesday nights. They did Awana. They've done VBS. They've done kids camp with churches. And we just kind of focus on hanging out with other people that way. Also, we get together with other families, and the blessing in that is you're able to control who is influencing your kids by who they're friends with and who they're spending time with. So that's a benefit. Now, for our personal testimony, my oldest was in kindergarten, then first grade, and then second grade. And he was in second grade when we pulled him out of the public school system. And so I had a second grader, and then my second born was in kindergarten that year when we decided to pull him out. And I really believe that the Lord was in this whole situation. It all started when there was a man that was working with my husband, and he kept telling my husband, you need to homeschool your kids. And this guy was also a Christian, and he just wouldn't let go of the topic. Every time they were together, he would say, you really need to homeschool. You need to look into homeschool. And David had at first blew it off a little bit, like, I don't know, we're happy with what we're doing. But the guy was very persistent. And one day he gave David a DVD, and it was called Indoctrination. And it had a picture of a school bus on it. And he said, I want you to take this home and you and your wife watch this video. And we did watch the video. And after the video, I asked David, I said, well, what do you think? And he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do because you're the one that would have to do it. But if it were up to me, I would want you to homeschool. And to be honest, I was surprised when he said that. I thought, really? You want to do this? This seems so scary to me, so uncharted territory. What would that be? I felt completely inadequate. I thought there was no way that I could do it. I mean, when I was in school, I struggled. I had a tutor from 7th grade all the way to 12th grade. I was very average in my school performance, and I particularly had a hard time with math. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to teach my own kids if I barely felt like I got by on my own when I was in high school. And for me, high school was so long ago, I thought, I don't remember any of that stuff anymore. How can I possibly do this? And if you think that, please keep watching because you absolutely can. It's absolutely possible. And I'm going to go over all those things. So we watched this video and more time went by and my husband started really thinking about the homeschool more and more. He was more open-minded to it after watching the video. And this paired with some things that were happening that we were hearing from my second grader when he was coming home from school. One of the things that started to happen was that as a second grader, even in kindergarten and first grade, he was very evangelical about his faith. He was always, talking to others in his class about God, and we, encouraged that. Well, what happened was his school was very multicultural, and he did have a student in there who was strong practicing Islam. And when he became aware of Alistair and his beliefs, he began to become very combative with him. And he would say things like, my family is going to kill your family. And just very dark things. So he would come home from school with these stories about what this kid had said. And not too much time had gone by that the child started to hit my son. And so it was usually when nobody was looking, they'd be in line or maybe on the playground, and he would start hitting my son because he was a Christian. And so I took it to the school, and they said that unless the teacher witnessed it firsthand, that there was nothing they could do to discipline based on just my son's testimony. So this boy that was hitting my son would always wait until nobody was looking, and then he would shove him or, push him in some way. And so this was wearing thin. The next thing that happened was this was around the time frame where they started talking about the gender unicorn being promoted in public schools. The kids had this unicorn on a piece of paper, and they would have to identify, when they did certain activities, what percentage of them felt more male or more female. So it'd be like, for example, when I'm on the playground, I feel, this percentage of a boy and this percentage of a girl. When I'm doing art class, I feel this percentage of a girl versus this percentage of a boy. And they wanted the kids to rate on this gray scale what percentage they felt of each gender during each activity. I don't think it actually got rolled out at our kids' school, but it was in the news, and certainly it was getting a lot of parent feedback. And this was an alarm to me of like, this is the direction that schools were going. And of course, I didn't agree with that. And I especially didn't agree with the fact that this was supposed to be a private, type of survey. It wasn't supposed to go home to parents. The next thing that happened was that my oldest in second grade was accepted into a gifted student program. And initially, when I heard that, I was proud. I'm like, oh, my son got accepted into gifted program. That's so amazing. But I was feeling really suspicious about it. And so I decided to dissect the paperwork and read all the little tiny print. And in the tiny print, it did say that gifted students had special needs that their parents may not be able to meet. Therefore, the gifted children would have access to private counseling that would be kept apart from the parents' knowledge. And when I saw that, it was just another red flag of like something that I would never agree to. And I would never allow my kid to see a counselor, outside of someone that I had selected and picked with Christian Foundation. And so that was another red flag. And the final straw was how in the classroom, there was a lot of discussion going on in the second grade class about whose God was the true God, because we had some Islamic believing students and we had Christian believing students, and they weren't meshing because the belief systems are at odds with one another. And so what the school did was they brought in a counselor to come into the classroom. And when the counselor did that, she said, according to my son's testimony, that there's many gods and they're all right. It doesn't matter which one you believe in, that we just need to respect one another. And that came home, when he came home, he told me that this had happened. And I was upset because there was no warning from the school that this meeting was going to be taking place discussing this topic. And I also believe that that's a lie. There are not many gods and they're not all correct. And so I took odds with that. So that was the final straw that led to us deciding that we were going to homeschool and that the public option is not neutral territory. I used to believe that public school was neutral grounds and that it was a place where you could go and no religion was really taught or promoted. But I've come to believe that public schools are not neutral grounds. They actually do promote things that I don't believe in, and I don't want those ideologies being taught to my children. So I learned that Becca, which is a school curriculum, a homeschool curriculum, was having a display at a hotel where we could go and you could look at their books and they would have someone there who could answer questions. So I went and I perused through the different books, through the different grade levels, and I was so on the fence about the whole thing. I was really feeling like I didn't have what it takes to meet the criteria to teach my own kids. But with the encouragement of my husband and also my dad, I did purchase the curriculum for my oldest child. And I thought I would start homeschooling my second grader and keep my kindergarten in public school while I got my feet wet. But to my surprise, after 2 weeks of public school with the kindergarten child, he did not want to continue in school. And I was surprised. I thought that he would want to go to kindergarten and be with other kids. but he cried every night and said that he wanted to stay home and homeschool as well, that he did not enjoy being in class. And we prayed about it, and we decided to take him out as well. So here I was homeschooling a second grader and a kindergartner for the first time, and I was nervous about it. Now, I will say with the Abeka program, they make it very easy for you. You can either do books or you can do books with a video teacher. And when I started out, I started with having just the books. It was a second grade kindergarten. I knew I could handle the material. So I would do the teaching and they would do the book work. The nice thing about Abeka is that you have teacher keys that tell you all the answers. So there's never a question about like what the right answer is in any of the books. And also in the video manual that they give you, or the book manual, it tells you in bold print, say this. It tells you, if we were talking about phonics rules, it will say, tell your kid, that the one vowel rule, and it will tell you what the rule is, and then you just say it out loud. So it literally tells you verbatim what to say if you're looking for that type of guidance. And then you have the test booklets that have all the answers. Now, I thought, okay, I'm sure I can handle this up to 5th grade, but what about middle school? What about high school? And now I'm here. So my oldest is in 10th grade. I have a 9th grader. I have a 6th grader, a 5th grader, and a 2nd grader, and they're all homeschooled. It has been such a blessing for our family to spend time with one another, and also relationally for the kids to interact with one another. They're very close siblings. They love each other. They talk and confide to one another, and it's a wonderful thing. So as long as you meet the state requirements, it's different for every state, and I know I'm talking for America. I'm sure other countries have different rules for homeschooling. But what's required in America is that once a year you take a standardized test, and we fulfill those requirements. What I thought was a really big blessing was that the Lord had really drawn us into the homeschool thing before the 2020 pandemic had happened, so that when that pandemic happened, we were already seamlessly working through our homeschool curriculum. There were a lot of people that switched to virtual learning that year, and then there were many that switched to homeschool for the first time. And I felt like it was a blessing that the Lord had called us to homeschool before 2020, so it just made that whole season less stressful for us. So I would say if it's something you're thinking about, Abeka makes it very easy. Their curriculum is very simple. When you get into higher level learning, you can rely on a video teacher. Actually, Abeka has the option for a video teacher all the way to kindergarten to 12th grade. And I was skeptical about the video teachers. I thought they might be boring. I didn't know if my kids would be interested in it. But I found that 5 out of 5 of my kids love the video lessons, especially my 2nd grader. She loves the video lessons. They're exciting and engaging and funny. The teachers do a great job involving the students, and none of my kids, regret that choice of the video lesson. And I like it because the teacher on the video is the one that teaches the history, the literature, the language, the Bible, the math. And as a parent, the only thing I do is I check the quizzes and tests. But if you don't want to do that, there is also an option for the school to grade those quizzes and tests if you do the online program. And so I've had experience doing both. I've done the online testing, and I've done the paper testing. And right now we are all doing the paper testing. That's what we prefer. And the kids take their quizzes and tests, and I grade them. Now, one of the big elephants in the room of homeschool is math. A lot of parents feel overwhelmed by math, and that can be a big sticking point for people who are afraid to kind of delve into this. And I will say there is a curriculum called teachingtextbooks.com, and they have all their math online from, I don't know if it goes all the way to elementary to 12th grade, I think. And that math curriculum, they grade all the homework and the tests, and they just give you a report card. And if they get a problem wrong, it goes back and it tells them why it's wrong, and it breaks down all the steps and reteaches it to them. So as a parent, you literally don't have to do anything for any of the math. It'll teach your child algebra, geometry, pre-calculus, all the things. And they watch the video and they do the homework, and it grades all the homework and also tells them where they made the mistakes, and then they fix it. And this website is so amazing. So if you're concerned about math at all, teachingtextbooks.com, go to that website, check it out. It's worth it. And it's also not very expensive, in my opinion. The whole thing is $75, and you don't have to buy a book. It's all online. And I think that that's an amazing deal. I would say too that a lot of people say, I hear a lot, people say, well, I would homeschool, but I don't have the patience for it. I would lose my mind. And I would say that the Lord really does give us what we need when we need it. And so if patience is something that you feel is on short supply, I would just pray about it. Patience is one of the fruit of the Spirit, and God will give you what you need for the season that you're in, and He'll give you the help you need. And if you have any questions about homeschooling or getting started, you can put it in the comments below. I'll try to answer it if I know the answer. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is testimony. So there was a point when my kids were a little older where I felt like homeschool wasn't working for us anymore. And the grades were going down. They were starting to goof off too much. And I thought, this isn't working. I'm not going to let them be home and not do their work or not understand the lesson. And so honestly, I felt like giving up. And this was before the 2020 pandemic timeframe, in case anybody's wondering. And I just felt like this wasn't going to work for me. I thought, well, maybe homeschool was a season. Now it's time to put them back into the system. And I really feel like the Lord stepped in a supernatural way to stop that from taking place, because I was literally on my phone looking at the public school website and trying to see like how to enroll. I was that serious about it. And my neighbor had texted me and said, hey, we had some mold in our crawl space. I just want to let you know, FYI, like, because our houses are next to each other, you might want to get your crawl space inspected. And I thought, well, thanks for the heads up. So I arranged to have our crawl space inspected. And very quickly, within the week, I had an inspector at the house to look at the crawl space. And when I answered the door, to my amazement, the first thing that he said was, hi, do you homeschool? And I was like, well, that's a weird way to start a conversation, opening the door. But I said, yeah, I do. Of course, he had saw the kids in the background. And he said, yeah, we homeschool too. And he said, how's it going for you? And I was like, well, not real good. Actually, I'm ready to put him back in the public school. I don't think it's working. And he said, really? Tell me what's going on. Start from the beginning. And to my amazement, he listened to me talk and say everything that I was experiencing and my frustrations. And he said, my wife homeschools my kids. And he said, you can feel free to call her if you want to talk to her for direct support. But God gave him amazing wisdom in that moment, because after he listened to me talk for about 20 minutes about how we were doing homeschool and why it was failing, he just said the simplest thing to me. He said, I have a farm and we raise dogs. And he said, the thing that I've learned is that you can't train two collies in the same pen. He said, if you separate your kids and put them in different rooms, they'll succeed better. And I was just kind of stunned by the simplicity. I thought, well, that would be really simple to just separate them because they were all in one room together. And so then, in the wisdom that could only come from God, I did that. I took my kids and I put them in different rooms, and their grades went right back up. And I was amazed. The solution was so simple. I was thinking all these it's not working. There's nothing I can do. And the thing that ended up fixing the problem was just simply putting them in different rooms. And I know that the Lord sent that man to my house at that time to give me that word so that I would know how to move forward. So we continued homeschooling. Another homeschool testimony that I have is that there's this park that's not real close to my house. And there's a train that goes past there pretty close to the park. And one of my kids was really into trains at that time. And I told him, when we get an opportunity, we'll go to that park and we'll look at the trains go by. And it just always felt like the timing wasn't right for us to go. And one day he brought it up and he's like, Mom, weren't we going to go to that park with the trains? And I was like, yeah, let's do it, So we went to the park with the trains, and we don't go there really at all. I mean, it's probably been years since we had been to that park. And we were there, and there was nobody there except for one other family. And the one family that was there, the mom walked up to me and she introduced herself to me and she said, Hi, do you homeschool? And I said, Yes. And I thought that was, again, a strange intro. And she said, Well, I'm thinking about homeschooling. And so I prayed to the Lord that He would send somebody to the park today that homeschools. And since you're the only one here, I figure you must be the one that the Lord sent. And I thought, What? That's amazing. So she wanted to know how to get started with homeschool, and I kind of walked her through the process, told her about what we do, and encouraged her that she had what it takes to do it and that she can be empowered to meet the needs of her kids. And she did, in fact, go into homeschooling her own kids. And I just love how God arranged that God appointment for us to be together. And it was an honor to me, I felt like, to be called by the Lord to meet this woman's prayer. And that blessed me. I thought, Lord, I am thankful that you would count me as a servant to go and answer the call. And I'm even thinking about it right now and feeling blessed by it. The next thing that happened was some time had gone by, and we had kind of lost touch with each other, this woman that I met at the park. We exchanged numbers and stuff, but some time had gone by and she had lost my phone number. And she was, again, having some homeschool questions, and she told her husband, I really wish I could find that lady that was at the park. And she said, maybe I'll pray for God to bring her back to the park. So she did. She prayed that I would go back to the park. So for a couple of weeks, she went to the park praying that I would show up again so she could get my number that she had lost. Well, it didn't work out that way that time. I didn't end up going back to the park. But she said by miracle, she was going through her phone, and somehow deep in the recesses of her phone, she had some deleted files or something like that, and my number was in there. And so she had told her husband, this is an answer from the Lord. I found this lady's number. And she called me again and she said, do you remember me? Can we get together again? I have some more questions. And when we met, we got together as a family, her family and my family, and she just shared that testimony about how she had prayed for the Lord to reconnect us, and here we were having dinner together, and what a blessing that was. And so if homeschool is something that you're interested in and you have questions about it, feel free to involve the Lord on it. Ask Him what His will is for your family, and ask Him to bring people into your life that can answer that call, that can answer your questions and guide you on that path of what's right for you and how you can move forward with those things. And if there's anything I can help you with, I certainly will by putting it in the comments. I'll do my best. And I hope that encourages you. The Lord gave you your children specifically to you. It wasn't an accident, and He gave you all the tools that you need to do the right thing, to do it successfully. And so have faith in that, have faith in the Lord, and take care.